Hello and welcome everybody to Artemisia Academy's free webinar for the month. We're going to be highlighting Amy Boldt. This is a herbalist story from school to farm and practice. My name is Emily Watson. I'm the director of Artemisia Academy, and we're so excited to have you guys here today. Thanks for joining. So just a little bit about Artemisia Academy. We are helping healed healers make a bigger impact in their community. So Artemisia Academy currently offers both online and in-person community-based education for herbal enthusiasts in Santa Barbara, Southern California region, and beyond. Come learn your local weeds, reconnect with yourself, your land, and your community. So I know we've got some people that are going to be joining a little bit later, but thank you guys for popping in. We always have to have little disclaimers in case we talk about what to do with herbs tonight. That might just happen. We always have to have a little disclaimer. So information presented in this webinar is for educational purposes only and does not include the diagnosis and treatment of disease, nor replace the advice of a licensed physician. So please refer to a licensed health professional for any illness or persistent symptoms before using herbal remedies. And herbs can sometimes cause discomfort or side effects and may interact adversely with pharmaceutical medications. Do not use herbs internally without the approval of a doctor or medical professional if you are currently on medications or have a history of medical conditions. So we're going to be welcoming in tonight Amy Boldt. So Amy is a clinical herbalist and educator dedicated to holistic health and herbal medicine. Her journey into herbalism began after overcoming severe GI issues, prompting her to pursue a Master's of Science in Therapeutic Herbalism from the Maryland University of Integrative Health. Amy specializes in anxiety and stress-related issues, blending ancient herbal wisdom and modern science through her practice, Wild Women Medicine. And as a former educator and single mother, Amy understands the challenges of balancing health and family. Her passion lies in empowering others with natural healing alternatives, emphasizing sustainable wellness practices rooted in nature. So join Amy to explore the transformative potential of herbal medicine and holistic health approach. So welcome, Amy. We're really excited to have you here. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen so we can see your lovely face. So welcome, my dear. How are you doing?
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm doing really well.
So give us a little background of where you live. So we're here in Southern California. This is where we're based. Where are you right at the moment? And we have this beautiful background of herbal jars that I see in the background. So I'd love to see what's going on in your little room there.
Yeah, so I am in Westminster, Maryland. So it's kind of central-ish, northern Maryland. I'm in a pretty rural community, even though Westminster is like the city. We have a 10-acre farm that is in a more secluded area. So it's definitely a lot of farmlands around us, but not a whole lot of herb farms. So that is one of the hats that I wear besides being a clinical herbalist. So yeah, and this is my working space where I see clients here at my desk, and then I have my apothecary behind me, and this is my practitioner space as well in my home office.
I love it. I love that you have so many beautiful things kind of integrating into your life right at the moment. The farm, the herbal practice, seeing clients like the apothecary in your own home. That sounds like a dream. Um,
Yeah.
can, can you tell us a little bit about what originally brought you to study herbal medicine, especially during your personal health challenges?
Yeah. So I didn't grow up like crunchy or with this at all. Like I was, my parents, raised us with like string cheese and Kool-Aid and Lunchables and antibiotics like crazy. And it just wasn't, something that I was brought up with. And so I kind of found it on my own through, like you mentioned, my issues with my digestive system, which, into my 20s kind of got worse. And I had a pretty standard, like, American diet. And, I was in my 20s, so I was indulging on weekends and things like that. And I was a teacher, so that also sometimes lends itself to, wine. But I kept having these issues with my stomach and I couldn't figure out what it was. And so, like, as I would normally do, I went to the doctor and they would, run tests and do all these things, and nobody was able to give me any answers. And it was just kind of a general IBS, but also like, I mean, I was going to the hospital for pain, and it was just becoming really, really challenging. And I got to the point where it was like, I'm getting the runaround. I'm not getting any, like, I'm like, well, what is wrong? Like, what can I do? And I remember asking this question with the GI, and I was like, but what should I do? And they're like, well, just take this purple pill. And then I'm like, okay, but like, what do I need to do? Like, isn't there something like causing this? Like, should I just not do something or do something more? And I never got any answers. And so I figured that was just the way that it was. And I actually was working with a woman whose mother was an herbalist in Haiti. And so I was really unfamiliar with what that was, but she kind of mentioned a couple of different things that her mom did. And I'm like, that's really cool. And funny enough, she kind of recommended probiotics, which at the time, like I was really unfamiliar with. So I tried it. And I noticed things were getting better. So then I kind of like was, more inclined to also think maybe this stuff she was talking about was helpful. And on my own, I just kind of realized that when I was eating less at night, like I just started having smaller meals at night, that like my issues were really going away. And I'm like how easy was that? Like how could you not just like, and now I work with digestion too. So I'm like, I know to ask this. I know to like suggest these things. So it kind of blew my mind that something so simple, I mean, that wasn't like all the answers, right? But it definitely showed that there was stuff I could have done. And I know now what I would have asked myself, like, well, how much coffee are you drinking and things like that. So, um, yeah, it just kind of steered me in that direction, because not to say I lost faith in the, modern medical system, because I definitely find value in that, but it definitely opened up a whole nother avenue for me to explore. And that's kind of what got me interested in herbalism. But really to be truthful, it was that I wanted to know first aid for foraging. I
Uh,
was really into that like prepping thing. It was like all this post-apocalyptic stuff was happening at the time, like all these, movies and things. So I thought it was really cool to like learn how to, do that and live off the land. And so that's honestly what got me to herb school.
so it was the perfect combination between like real health stuff and watching survival shows and wanting to figure out what you can live off of in the wild. Is that
Pretty much.
right?
Yeah. So you
Okay.
never know what's going to call you into that lineage and that path.
I think that's beautiful. And I love that you have that honesty of just being like, well, and there's also, you know, foraging is really exciting. And I know when I first started, I was definitely like, but herbs are everywhere. And how do we not know? And yeah,
It's
yeah.
wild.
So and where did you grow up? Did you grow up where you were at?
I did. Yeah. I grew up outside of DC actually.
Okay.
So in like the suburbs.
And I know for me, like growing up in my woods, and these are my woods behind me, I didn't know any plants growing up. And did you have any connection? Did you go hiking a lot, or how connected were you
Yeah, I
camping or
didn't know
whatever?
any plant. I knew poison ivy, but but
Okay.
I really didn't know any plants like that. We did go camping a lot, and my mom was very like outdoorsy, so I was in the woods frequently, and my parents always had our house, even though it was more of like the suburbs, had like woods around it, so I was always kind of surrounded by trees. And I remember my first um connection, I think, with a plant, which was a tree. It was outside of my bedroom window when I was probably like 7. And it would bloom in May. And it was just beautiful, like flowers. And I remember seeing that in the mornings, and, the days are getting longer, and it was happy. And I would climb up this tree, and I made myself a swing, because it was like, the early 90s, and I just was allowed to free range. And I grabbed a rope and a 2x4, and I like made myself a swing way up in this tree, and I would just hang out. And I named the tree, and I like remember being like having this interesting connection that I hadn't had. And I don't know that I did again really until I became older and got where I am now, but it makes total sense to me now, because I really resonate with that plant spirit with trees. And I'm also really tall, so that kind of works.
Well, I thank you for giving that little insight into your childhood, because I feel like there's always like that little part of being a kid that comes out being an herbalist where you get to do this as an adult. And so, yeah, like, what was kind of that turning point for you that made you transition into more holistic approaches? Like, when did you decide that you wanted to study herbalism rather than it's just an interesting thing?
I think when I was in the classes I was taking, and I mean, I was such a newbie. Like I knew chamomile, but I was like one of those people. Like I saw people taking tinctures and I had no idea what they were doing. Like I thought this was maybe acid. I didn't know what it was. Like people are dropping things in their mouth from their purse. I had no clue. So I was super, super new. But learning about just how effective these were and how safe, and I, had been on medication. I had panic attacks since I was a kid, and so I, was prescribed really intense like medication for that didn't sit well with me. And so trying, and as we do, it's herbalists, right, is like we guinea pig on ourselves a little bit, like we try stuff out first. So it was just incredible how effective like this plant medicine stuff was. And I think that really like pulled me in that direction and made me realize how important this forgotten knowledge was. And so it also started to bring me, I'm really interested in like that, the folk tradition and the, heritage, and, particularly with women and like carrying this knowledge. I don't have that in my past, and I'm sad for that, so I want to make sure that I bring this to my daughter. Like it's really important to me to continue that lineage, or just start it anew or refind it. So
I
there's a lot
think that
to unpack.
I think that's so beautiful that you want to keep passing it down. And I know uh I love the whole like where the tincture's dropping acid. Like that's such a great kind of newbie approach for anyone that hasn't like ever seen an herb school before. People, drink teas all day, but people are also taking dropper bottles of alcohol extract. So that's what we're talking about here was actually like an herbal tincture, an herbal extract, not acid.
No, 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 no. But
But
I never,
yeah,
yeah, I had never seen people like taking a dropper of anything before.
but it could definitely be a little shocking the first time you like, and very different from, Western medicine. In herbalism, you actually try all the different remedies that you ever give people versus, doctors don't try all the different medicines that they give everyone. So it's a very different approach because, we do have a very tactile, hands-on, we experiment with everything on ourselves first approach. So yeah, I love that.
Which you
Um,
kind of have to do too, right? Like you have to know how something tastes before you are going to try to like suggest that to somebody, and to know how it sits. It's really important to do that.
it's a
I thought.
very it's kind of like medicine blended with being a chef. Like in the Western world, we like things to taste good, so we have to, you know,
Right.
we have to make sure that our clients will actually drink it. So yeah, when did you start deciding that you wanted to study herbalism? Like what exactly did that look like? What made you be like, I want to go to herb school? And then why did you decide to pursue a master's in herbalism? I know that you were already an English teacher, is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did that kind of all evolve?
Well, like I mentioned, I wanted to just find some classes to take to learn about herbs in general, which at the time, back in like 2012, where I am, like there wasn't anything I could find. And so the only thing I could find was the school. At the time, it was called Thai Sophia, and it had this certification, like a certificate for herbal studies. And I'm like, well, that's perfect. Like that's just enough for me to like get my feet wet and learn about it, and move on with my way. But again, like as I was in there and learning more and really getting immersed in this whole holistic field, which is again totally foreign to me, especially as my profession as an English teacher. But I felt so deeply moved in there. And what turned out to be like, well, I'm just going to get the certificate. I was halfway to a master's, um and that was something that I had wanted to have anyway at some point, was to earn a master's degree. And it just was like resonating with me at the time. I was going through a really like just awful divorce. And so it's like the worst timing in the world to decide to go to grad school when you have three little kids and you're in a teaching profession that requires lots of hours. But um, in retrospect, what I found is that I really do think that the plants were calling me at that time. And I didn't know it at the time, but they were, because I needed that healing from that community. I needed that healing from like what the plants could offer. I mean, it was a healing time for me during the worst time of my life. And I can say that now looking back 10 years, but um, yeah, so I want to say I made the choice to do that, but honestly, I really do think that it was me being called to be on the plant path, so to speak, I guess.
I love that you talk about your calling, because I feel like a lot of people in this profession are called to the plants and called to their journey. And a lot of time it is that the big undertaking of, oh yeah, and I have to do this deep underbelly work too for myself. And we don't always like think that that's what we're jumping in for. That's a lot of times what happens. Um, yeah, do you mind explaining a little bit about how you balance your life through all of these things as a mother of three, studying, managing, being an educator, and everything else at the same time? Like, how do you get through? And
I
tips for people that might be juggling that much or more, because we're seeing a lot more people as mothers starting off in the world of herbalism.
Yeah, well, what was so the when I was in the school I was at, it was all in person. And so it was on certain weekends. So a lot of it was very concentrated. So on those weekends were ones that I had the kids with their dad so that I could use that whole time. And it was long days, but I would stay in the library and get the work done there. I would try to get most of it done like on the campus at the time. So I also have ADHD. So I've found over the years the strategies that I would use with students, to help them, I've applied to my own life. And for me, chunking really works. So I need like structure very much. And so if I can write down, this happens on this day, I'm working from this time to this time and stick to it, it doesn't feel as overwhelming. So that's pretty much what I did to get through most of that. Was I designated certain days that I would sit down and work on this thing and this thing. But yeah, I mean, coming home and having to work on the homework with the kids, was they'd be working on their homework and I'm working on my work. And so um, it was a really kind of balancing act. And sometimes I look back and I'm like, I don't even know how I did that, because I'm exhausted if I have to go to the grocery store and do one other thing now. So like, how did I do that? But it's when you love something, it really didn't feel as much work because it was so different than what I was doing in my normal life, that it was like um, a release, like to be studying and doing, the research. Like I taught a lot of research as a teacher, so that was easy for me to do that portion of it. But it's really for me, I think it was just time management and knowing you're not going to be perfect at everything. Like I wasn't probably the best mother at that time. I wasn't the best. I didn't need A's, I was happy just doing a solid job that I knew I was putting in the effort. So
Thanks for that
perfection
humility.
doesn't work when you have all these things going on.
No, I think that's a huge part of it is, learning that, when you do juggle a lot, it's not going to all be perfect. And there's only so many things you can realistically take care of at one time and keep your wits about you.
But
Yeah.
there has to be a shut off. Like you have to stop. You have to give yourself, like I have a very hard and fast rule of like I don't do anything after 9 o'clock. Like I go to bed at 10, like clockwork. So
I
it's
love it.
like 9 to 10, that's my time. The kids know, nobody talks to me. Like I need that.
Well, that kind of transitions into my next question is like how did you start focusing in on uh stress and actually let me back up a little bit. From herb school, okay, how did you figure out what you wanted to do with it afterwards? Let's kind of ask that question.
I didn't have a plan. So a lot of times in my life I have found that forcing like the square peg in that circle hole or whatever it just doesn't work for me. So I tried to kind of, I use prayer a lot. I spend time in nature a lot. I listen a lot, and I trust my gut a lot. It's been better now that I'm older, I found. But so I knew that there was something I was supposed to do with this, right? I just didn't know what I was called to do yet. And at the time, it wasn't being a clinician. And I couldn't afford to get rid of my job as a teacher while I was a single mother. So, like, I did herbs on the side, and it was, friends and family and still keeping up with all of that. But, um, it's like a tool in my toolbox that I wasn't sure how I was going to make into a profession yet. So it was a matter of knowing when the time is right, I will know. When things align right, I will know. And they did. And so, yeah, it was just a matter of like listening to where I was supposed to be rather than what I necessarily wanted always.
So what manifested from this journey? And you mind giving us a little peek inside Amy's world of like, where did this beautiful practice, business, and farm kind of manifest and unfold?
Well, I always liked growing the plants. So even when I wasn't doing anything really professionally herbally, I was always growing. I wanted as many different varieties of things as I could because I just love being with them, sitting with them, watching them develop from each stage. Like that just is part of who I am. And so I always have to have those plants growing with me. So that part was easy. But the way that it actually happened, well, I ended up um, meeting somebody and dating them. And, you know, we ended up getting married. So it was a little bit easier for me to not have to carry that load all on my own. So it gave me a little flexibility, but I wasn't planning on not teaching anymore. So when the pandemic happened, my school was going to be going in full time. My children were going to be home alone because they were at different school districts, and I couldn't leave my kids alone at this new place we just moved to. So they were like, well, I guess that's it. So I'm like, oh, okay. So teaching was done. And I'm like, well, everybody was, the COVID thing, and people were looking for natural things. And it was like a lot of misinformation was also being spun around. And so people were coming to me asking me for, oh, you're, a weird herbalist person. Like, what do you know about this? I'm like, well, I don't know, but I know how to support this, this, and that. So I it just kind of fell into my lap, and I realized like this is the time. Like that chapter has ended. This one I've been waiting for to happen, and it's here. And it just hit right, man.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Congratulations. And I love that. I definitely do believe that there's a time and place, and just like with a lot of people over COVID, like I feel like some people got displaced and some people sunk into place, and that sounds like really beautiful timing.
Yes, and we had just bought our property right before that. So even with a lockdown, like I had plenty of, I mean, I learned every plant that we have here. It was like I knew it. It gave me a lot of time to really explore a lot of different parts of myself, and the land, and connect in different ways. So yes, it was a horrible time, but also there's a lot you have to, I mean, I like to look at things in a balanced way. So
Yeah, yeah, I love it. So, with your practice that's kind of unfolded, and you said like at first you didn't want to be clinical, and then you started becoming clinical. How did that unfold, and how did you decide to start specializing in stress and anxiety?
I it started to unfold because people were starting to come to me asking for questions, and I found myself like giving advice more than I had thought I would. And the area that I moved to, nobody knows. People still don't know what herbalism is here. I do a lot of education, which is right up my alley. So in the beginning, I was really just educating my community on holistic practices, using plants as medicine. We have a crazy amount of biodiversity of really beautiful native medicinal plants around here. So I really wanted people to know what was right outside, because for me, that's how we connect with the land, and that's how we preserve, and that's how we create reciprocity and all of that good stuff. So it started to become more of like education. And then the clinical thing just kind of happened because people were already coming to me. But once you start charging, it's different. So, you know what I mean? Like it sounded like I had all these people and they did want to ask me lots of questions, but once you make it a thing, then sometimes it's not quite as busy.
Well, so I think that's a conversation we have with a lot of our, herbal graduates that are going into practices is you start developing this thing called boundaries. And instead of giving away all of your services for free, you eventually start charging, and that's a boundary saying that my time is worth money. And so, yeah, I think that's like a very natural flow, you know. But
I didn't
yeah,
answer the stress part, actually. I forgot
yeah.
that part.
So
Yeah.
how did you go into like the stress and anxiety as your focus? Yeah.
Because I had so much of it. So because that was always something that I had been living with. So I do think it really helps to be able to identify with a certain thing. I know other practitioners who, so that's my niche. Like I've decided to just kind of niche down my practice. It makes it a lot easier in some ways. But I know other practitioners who have a niche that is just something they're interested in and they like working with that because it's like fascinating how the body works, right? So for me, it was more of like, it takes one to know one. Like, I know how this feels. And I know that when I started taking, for instance, like pulsatilla in drop doses, that I didn't need benzos anymore. And I just couldn't believe how effective that was for me. And I really wanted to share that with other people because, I mean, as we know, like the rate of anxiety is like off the chart now. And I had students of mine when I was teaching English who I like really, really loved. And they were no longer coming to school because their anxiety and the medications they were on were so intense that I'm like, I really wish I could tell you and just give you this herb or tell your mom or something. But that's like, I couldn't. And it
Can't
was
do
so
that.
frustrating.
Yeah.
So I really just wanted to help other people based on my own personal experiences. And it's it's so crucial. Like the nervous system is so connected to like pretty much, I'm going to say, everything right now. And that's like in my practice, that's pretty much the first thing I'm doing is like we're doing nervous system support in lifestyle and everything. Um and yeah, it's necessary.
Yeah. And I think especially like post COVID, you know, it's gotten worse rather than better.
Some people
And
wear
it's
it like a badge, like I'm so stressed out and it's like a pride thing and I'm
yeah,
like, let it go.
yeah.
It doesn't feel good.
I love that you bring up pulsatilla. Are there any other herbal allies that are some of your go-tos?
Yeah. So right now, and it's funny because I'm finding now that when I do have so many of the same types of people, and I do my dosing and my work on constitutions and like doshic kind of ways. So I would think that the formulas are like really different, but I'm finding some of them are so similar over and over. And I'm like, shoot, am I just like hitting like I don't know why, but it's so skull cap is just, and it's because like of the way that people are describing their anxiety and where it's affecting them, and those herbs are just really good for that thing. So right now there's a lot of skull cap happening in my life and other people's lives. I think that's like an incredible herb for sleep and for even just like daily chronic anxiety. It's a lot of us are so cerebral right now. um I'm using milky oats like crazy because, it's one thing to like deal with the superficial or the acute symptom, but you really need to be working on it on the back end too. So adaptogens and milky oats is like a nice strong double extraction of like fresh milky oats on the daily.
I think you just named off two of my favorite herbs, so I love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
No,
sweet.
I think I think a lot of my students they start coming back, they're like, I know you said that we'd use the same herbs over and over again, but I'm really using the same herbs over and over again. It's like you end up just kind of getting stuck to a few and they just end up being your besties through everything that you do. And there's nothing wrong with that. I love it. Thank you
Yeah,
for
and I'm trying to
sharing
branch
that.
out. So like whatever I do every like couple of months or year is I'm like, okay, what have I not played with yet? Like linden was one that I keep, hearing, but I've never actually used much in my practice. So and I don't have it growing on my property. So I've been messing with linden, and I really like linden right now. So I've been using that a lot. And I really want to be doing more with mimosa. So I haven't, and I'm like, why have I not done that?
I have a
So
lot of students bringing up mimosa for me too. So I think we're both going to be trying it this year.
yeah.
I love it. Um, I want to hear a little bit more about your wild woman medicine. Tell us a little bit more about your practice, about, you know, just your mission, how you serve clients, how your practice is unfolded, whatever you want to share about it.
So I did, it's really interesting. You can know a lot about herbs, right? And then have like, it's a whole nother thing to be working in this like clinical way. And I know some people don't like the term like clinical herbalist, but I find that it's helpful for me because there are a lot of people right now who are learning about herbs from all different places. And I don't think it's always great to be giving advice to people when you don't know about contraindication, and everybody's on medications now. So um I didn't know where to start, but one of my favorite professors when I was in herb school, I think I had reached out to her when I started playing around with the idea of like doing this. And I think around the same time she was developing this Monday mentoring group for other like herbalists, and she had a program to help people set up their practice. So, and I signed up for the course, and it was really helpful to learn the behind the scenes of like, you know, an LLC, if you want to do that, or sole proprietorship, or all these different things, and like insurance and banks and all these things, you know, that I would never have known about. So I spent about a year before I ever really opened my practice, like learning all of those things, business related. Because again, like being an English major, I didn't know anything about these things. So that was really helpful. And then we kind of like unpacked all that. And then I was like, put out my shingle. And I was planning on just doing like a virtual thing, because that way I could access people from all over. But I found it was really challenging to get the reach of people outside of my community. And I'm not a fan of social media. I'm on it because I have to be,
We
but I'm
found you
trying.
on social media. I'll just let you
Yeah.
know. So you're
I
doing a great
know,
job.
like
You're doing a
I
great job.
I need a person to do this. I don't, because I don't want to get sucked into it. I don't want to scroll. Like I'm trying to like, this is part of the whole like nervous system support. Like I don't want to be on it, but I
Yeah.
need it.
Yeah.
So I kind of became more of a community herbalist because it was just easier, and I was not about to pay for ads and stuff. I'm like, that's just not where I'm at.
Yeah.
But my community has no idea what herbalism is, and they're very skeptical of all of that. And so I again like had to really begin all of this with educating the community, inviting them, you know, to see what there was to offer. I started to blend some teas and to sell them. Um, so just getting people to be comfortable with it. And yeah, that's kind of how it started. So my personal feeling toward herbalism is we are really close to, we're part of the Appalachian Mountains here, and there's so many incredible herbs, and there's just a really beautiful tradition out this way. And again, I really want to lean into like relearning all of that, because I do have family that was from those mountains, but I don't know anything about them, and that story is lost. So I do eventually want to write a book, or I want to do some like deep diving into this area and the heritage there with the herbs. But these are the same herbs that I have growing on our property. And so I try to really get people to utilize the plant medicine that is in their vicinity,
Yeah.
rather than necessarily like the cool, exciting, exotic ones that are other places. We're part of the United Plant Savers Association, and
Nice.
so our farm is listed as a botanical sanctuary with them.
Yeah. So
So
tell us a little bit more about your your homestead farm that you've started developing, and you know, what's kind of that process of unfolding been for you? I know that's been a
Well,
dream for a lot of my students. It's like one day I'll have a farm or a homestead or whatever. And the reality is it's a lot more work. Um, but
it
I'd
is.
love to hear how that's unfolded.
It's good work. So I do not have a partner who is like on the same page with me. So he's a city boy and he's still a teacher and he's he's getting his doctorate right now. And so it's me, and this is part of the struggle, is when there's one person that's doing a lot of it, it's very challenging, but it's good work. So we we wanted some property just because, again, like I'm just used to being in the woods, um and it was like perfect, and it was like these medicinal plants. When we walked the land, I was like, I cannot believe like these this is the right place, man. So I was like, there's so much we could do here. So there was forest farming aspect that I wanted to cultivate with like the ginseng and the golden seal and the Solomon sea and all these amazing plants that we had here already, and to promote that and teach other people in the area about like, hey, don't just be bulldozing or bush hogging through all this. Like, there's really good stuff here. So that was part of it. And we had the land to grow herbs, and I've always just enjoyed growing plants. So um, I'm like, let's just get this sod off the ground and I'm just going to throw some stuff in there and see what happens. So there are certain herbs that I really do find that are just better if I grow them myself. And I have to source a lot that I don't grow myself, obviously. But I'm really kind of persnickety about where I get my bulk herbs from. So there are certain ones like lemon balm, like I don't care. Like that's never gonna be as
It's always
um,
better fresh. You can't get around it. Yeah.
it's
It's
easy
just
to grow here. So I was like, and I use it all the time. So what I do is I focus on the herbs that I use in my practice, is the ones that I kind of try to cultivate on a larger scale. At one point I had thought maybe I was going to be selling like bulk, fresh herbs to people. And I was reading, um, is it Zach Woods? I think it's Zach Woods, right? I have it probably right here, the Herb Farm book. And I was like, I could totally do this, man. Because people do it on an acre. And I'm like, I got 10 acres. But so that's the whole like the dream versus the reality part. And I'm learning now, like, where's my limit? Because it is just me doing it. And I don't have all this money to buy all this equipment. I don't have all this time to do it if I'm working on my practice. So I keep it to a level now that is manageable. I do a lot of plants that are going to self-seed, like calendula and like California poppy and like lemon balm, just things that'll come back nicely for me. Ones I use a lot, like oats, I do a huge section for that because I use it frequently. But the way you have to think about it, I think, is like, why, right? Like I'm not going to probably be using or growing herbs that I don't use very often. I want ones that I want to tincture fresh. So I make a point to grow ones that I will be able to tincture fresh, because having a pot with some blue vervain and it's cute, but like, and when you start out with herbalism and you get a tincture and you make it and it's like, you get this little jar and you're like so proud of yourself, you have this little jar, but then you realize like therapeutically, you're going to need a whole lot more of that. So I needed to do it on a larger scale. So in my world, if it needs to be babied, it's not staying here. Like I need herbs that will grow well in my crappy soil with my half ability to be there all the time for them.
I love that. And I think that's such a really sustainable approach to it, because when you only have so much time and energy, and let alone you're running a practice, you're raising kids, like you've got a partner, you name it, how can you do more? So I think that's beautiful that you've simplified it to what's easy, what's useful, and what are the ones that you want to tincture. Like I love that you've really narrowed it down.
Yeah. And if you could even do it like more organized, like seasonally, you know what I mean? Like in the harvesting earlier versus later, give yourself time to mess with it, like I was a lot of like, trial and error for me.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, I'm not expending money doing that. So that's nice. So if I decide like this summer, it's been a wash because I haven't really had the time. So like there's nothing lost. I didn't invest much more than like my time, and I love spending time out there anyway.
Yeah. What do you think has been one of your hardest learning lessons starting a business, starting practice, and starting a farm? Like, give me like the top one or two if you can. I think it's a tough question, I know.
Um, Not comparing yourself to other people's success.
The FOMO on social media is real. And I always like to tell my students like the best herbalists suck at social media, so just get over it.
It's man, and I again like I am authentic to a problem where I just this is what's up, and I'll be in these meetings with other people and I'm like, is anyone making money? Like, is anyone are you doing just this? And the thing is like, no, I don't think anybody if anyone's being honest, nobody has come forth and you know what I mean? They're all doing other things. You have to have your hand in lots of pots and it's good, right? Because you can get really burnt out seeing clients. Like if I actually had a full load of clients, like for real, I don't even know that I would have the energy. I wouldn't like it anymore.
I hear a doctor seeing like 50 clients a day, and I'm like, I could never do that. Like, 50 clients in a month sounds like too much, like I totally appreciate that because getting to do the farming practice brings the balance back into life.
And there's times I'm like, I'm not doing this thing. I'm not doing that anymore because like there's no money. I'm not getting money from farming that stuff. So I was like, I'm not going to do it this year. But then like that's my joy. So I need to when I need a break between like, protocols and doing all the like sitting at the desk stuff, I need to go out there and just be outside with my friends. And it's work, I'm pulling weeds, but I'm also talking to them like a weirdo and spending time with my plants and
I love it.
recharging.
I love it. Someone put a question in the chat. They asked, did you find the farm or did the farm find you?
The farm definitely found me. Because
Cute.
this place that we found was not, I mean, it was in our budget, but it should not have been. And then it just popped up out of the blue. My realtor didn't even see it. Like we were just like messing around looking at stuff. It was crazy. They had just dropped the price. It was fortuitous. Like I couldn't believe it. I kept walking around being like, this isn't real. This isn't real. This can't be part of it. These trails aren't part of it. It was meant to be.
That sounds
So now
awesome.
we can't leave.
That's awesome. Uh, Michael said it was meant to be. Thank you. Yeah, so I'll definitely open up. If you guys have any other questions that you'd like to ask Amy, please feel free to put them in the chat. I am going to ask a couple more as filler, but please feel free, you guys, to anything that you'd love to learn about what it's like to be an herbalist, a practitioner, a farmer, you name it. We'd love to hear it. I'll ask the question while I'm waiting for folks to fill something in. What would be your best advice for people starting out in the herbal world, starting to develop something? Any tidbits that you'd like to share?
I think what's really cool about the herbal world is that there are so many different facets of being an herbalist. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to see clients, you don't have to grow plants. Like, there are so many different ways to be involved with herbalism um, that I think that it's worth kind of like seeing where you're called or what you enjoy and what part of it is using your skill sets or um yeah, I think it's good to know that there's a lot of different ways to incorporate herbalism in your life and having a community that is like-minded. So where I live, like I didn't there's not a lot of it's not hip here, man. Like but when you find those little pockets of people and they kind of like connect and then you can find this little community has been like a really crucial part of my practice. It's been a crucial part of my like knowledge and um support because you need that support a lot when you're doing this. So we get imposter syndrome like crazy. And it's just good to hear other people and their experiences and learning from them. Because it's a constant, I mean, it's constantly learning. There's never gonna, you can't stop. I mean, there's no end. Because then you got like, oh, well, the astrological herbalism stuff, like there's never an end.
I 100% agree with that. Um, and you know, the community, thank you for mentioning the community part, because I feel like that's, especially going into this field where it is outside the box. It's a little different. You're kind of carving your own way. Having that community support is the only way to really go forward through it. Absolutely. So
Yeah, I see Michael's question
yeah,
about.
so Michael said, interested in hearing how the skepticism from her community around herbs evolved. Did offering some good teas do the trick for a good number of them? Um, herb walks, other things. It's sort of it's a transformation of sorts to start including plants in one's life.
Yes. And what's funny is that my first few clients, like I kind of thought that people who already knew about this would be who I saw first, but it really wasn't. And it was the people who are at the end of their rope who were like, everything else has not worked. I'm willing to take a chance on this weird woman who's a wild woman, It was like, and that's a sad thing to admit, but that's what happened. So people were like, I got nothing else to lose. And I don't want to take any more medicine. So that's how it started. And I think that when you can make a change and show through what you're doing with them, things are getting better, even subtly, then they're like, oh, this isn't just like quackery. This is, I feel better. So that's how it's, for me, it's been a trickling kind of a thing here. And I mean, people will often use word of mouth, but I actually don't find that to be the case because where I am, I think they're afraid to admit to other people that they're seeing an herbalist. I
I,
do,
and,
because I have had great successes and I'm like, well, then tell your friends.
and thank you for admitting that, because I think this is something that people are still realizing. You know, there's parts of the country that they're very affluent with herbs. Everyone does something, like you go down to LA and there's like elixir tea bars everywhere, you know, and then there's other parts where it's like herbs are still so baby new, even though they are our roots and our ancestors. There's still people that look at us sideways saying, you want to do what? You know, and yeah.
So
So
that's why,
how do you feel like you could break through that a little bit more? Or what helps break through that, I guess I should ask.
well, having people take the chance, right, and try it has been helpful. That's definitely for me been like the biggest like whoa, like aha moment for people. And then they'll trust you. And then like, yeah, I'll do like that woman that came to me, that one of the first people I saw was at the end of everything, had a ton of problems. I was overwhelmed. I'm like, oh my God, like what do I do? Um, so starting small, with little things. And it was, helping and nudging it in the right direction. But I had that poor woman. I mean, because we learn, when you start out, like what you do first, it's like you look back, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I was having this woman do like this really complicated tea preparation with like, well, first you have to do your decoction of the roots. So first do that. And then we're going to add the aerial parts in, and then you got to let it steep for 20 more minutes. And know it tastes bad, but you just got to get it in there, and you got to do that 3 times a day. And so, I mean, she trusted me.
Really
And look
sweet.
at that now. But yeah, so I think I'm not really sure how to get the word of mouth thing to work better. And I do think that I hear it works good for other people. But yeah, the herb walks help. I'm really into the like ecological portion of being an herbalist. I think that we don't want to just be like these allopathic, trading off, this pill for this herb instead, which is what a lot of people kind of want.
Yeah.
And so I want them to be reflecting on the plants. I want them to see how the plants grow. I want them to understand the energetics of that, because I have had clients where there was a disconnect with the like mother nature completely. And I know that herb should have worked. I mean, she was taking a hero dose of something that I have no idea how it didn't do. Physiologically, it had to do something, but that disconnect between herself and like her roots was pretty intense. So I can only guess that there there needs to be this kind of synergy
And I
there.
think, that bridging the gap with, bringing people in nature, that's half the healing.
Mhm.
And I think continuing to use your passion with teaching in a beautiful way is just so wonderful that you're kind of bridging it all together.
Yeah.
Nocebo effect. That's right.
Pretty much.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah, no, it's been an interesting but really amazing. It feels good to know that I'm in the right place doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Amy, for spending your very late evening with us, sharing your story, sharing your background, and really just really excited to get to know you a little more and can't wait to, across the country become closer herbal friends over time.
Yeah, definitely.
I love that we're doing this, totally across totally different time zones. Um, yeah, but thank you again so much for joining us, and thank you everyone for popping in and sharing stuff. If you guys have any other last questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat. But otherwise, I'm kind of just going to close this up. But Amy, would you mind sharing how people can find out about you online or on social media?
So I am on Facebook. It's the Wild Woman Medicine at the Barefoot Medicine Farm, which is a mouthful. I'm on Instagram at the Wild Woman Medicine, and um, I am on LinkedIn as Amy Boldt. And I have a couple of websites. I have one for my practice, which is thewildwomanmedicine.com. And I have one for our farm, which is it's just www.barefootmedicinefarm.com. So yeah.
Thank you so much, my dear. Well, thank you all again so much for coming. And thank you, Amy, for sharing all of your beautiful wisdom. Just a little, heads up for those that are interested in learning more about herbalism. Our Herbal Apprentice program is closing this Friday for enrollment for the season. So if you guys want to join, there's still a few days left to jump in. So go ahead and check that out. You can find us as well on Instagram, and we will be posting links to this video both on Instagram as well as on YouTube. So we just started a YouTube channel a few months ago, so you'll see our recordings up there. And then you can find us at artemisiaacademy.com. You can email us at info@artemisiaacademy.com or Instagram at Artemisia Academy. So thank you all so much, you guys, and looking forward to sharing more fabulous adventures and herbal stories with you coming up in the next couple months. So have a great night, you guys, and take care. Thanks, guys.